It was a wild week 2 in the NFL that featured a lot of crazy upsets. What does it all mean? We'll talk about that. It's the Jake Asman Football Show, and it starts right now.
Oh, yeah. It's time for the Jake Asman Football Show. Brought to you by BetUS. Expert betting odds and fantasy stats. So let's get into some NFL football. Brought to you by our friends at BetUS. So get your questions ready. Here's your host, Jake Asman.
Yeah, buddy. Here we go. Welcome in, everyone. It's another Jake Asman Football Show presented by BetUS. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We talk NFL football multiple times every week. Our next show is expected to be on Friday. Cole Thompson will join us in his weekly spot to make picks for the upcoming Week 3 slate. We'll talk a little Jets-Patriots on Thursday Night Football this week a bit later on in the show. But I want to open the Jake Asman Football Show by diving into some of the top takeaways from Week 2. And so much of what happened in Week 2 basically defied everything we saw in Week 1. In Week 1, the Cowboys looked like world beaters. In Week 2, the Dallas Cowboys got destroyed in their home opener by the New Orleans Saints, who hung 44 points on the board in a 44-19 win. In Week 1, we watched the San Francisco 49ers dominate the Aaron Rodgers-led Jets without Christian McCaffrey. In Week 2, we saw Sam Darnold, who was Brock Purdy's backup last year, beat up the 49ers. Sam Darnold playing excellent again for the second week in a row in a 23-17 win. In Week 1, we saw the Detroit Lions set the tone in a playoff rematch, win in overtime against the Rams. And then in Week 2, we watched them lose to the Bucs, who they beat in the playoffs last year, on their way to getting to the conference title game. So there were a lot of wild results, not to mention the fact you had the Browns bouncing back after they looked awful Week 1 at home against the Cowboys. They went into Jacksonville and beat the Jaguars to send them to 0-2. You had the Raiders going out there and stunning the Ravens, coming back down double digits in this game, 26-23. The Ravens are 0-2. The Cardinals putting up 41 points. Marvin Harrison Jr. having his first huge game as a pro, 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. 41-10, they win over the Rams, who now are 0-2. The Steelers, I know they haven't played great teams necessarily, but 2 road wins for the Steelers to start the year. They're 2-0. Mike Tomlin's doing it again with a backup in Justin Fields, who probably should remain the starter at this point. And then you had the crazy ending to the Chiefs and the Bengals with a Chiefs win over Cincinnati, 26-25, sending Cincinnati to 0-2. The New York teams, the Jets got their first win, clutch comeback by Aaron Rodgers, 5 for 5 on the game-winning drive. Jet defense holds on, but they lose Jermaine Johnson for the season. That's a big loss for New York. Giants, they made history, not the kind you want. They scored 3 touchdowns and lost to a team that didn't score a touchdown. It's never happened before. Commanders kicked 7 field goals with a kicker they signed on Tuesday and beat the Giants, who lose in large part because they don't have a kicker. So we had some crazy results in the NFL this past week. Here's what it means. It means that it's a long season. It means that just because you look great in Week 1, we all overreact. It doesn't mean you're going to look great in Week 2. It means the first 4 games of the year, typically teams are just trying to get their bearings. A lot of teams didn't play their starters in the preseason. It takes time. I have a saying I say a lot. You can't win the Super Bowl in September, but you could lose it. You don't want to bury yourself. Like the Bengals now at 0-2, not good. I know they've done this now 3 years in a row, but still. The Ravens 0-2, not good. Jacksonville 0-2, not good. You don't want to bury yourself. You don't want to put yourself in a hole that you're trying to chase out of all year. That's the key. But you look at what we've seen in the NFL so far. I mean, does anyone actually think the Saints or the Vikings are the best team in the NFC? I don't. So you don't want to overreact just to 2 games. But you also want to acknowledge what we have seen so far. So we're in that tricky part of the year where you really don't know what we know. But that's what makes football so fun. But man, this was a wacky week. And you already have, I think, one thing that we know for sure. The Carolina Panthers stink. 26-3, they lose to the Chargers, who now are 2-0. Jim Harbaugh undefeated thus far as the Charger coach. And Bryce Young has already been benched. Yesterday, Andy Dalton was named the starter. Dave Canales, the first-year coach there who wasn't part of the regime that drafted Bryce Young, says Andy Dalton gives us the best chance to win. I mean, what a mess the Panthers are. And I'm not sitting here telling you Bryce Young's great, but this is what happens when you go to a bad team. You're forced to play right away. You lose your confidence. You have two different head coaches, two different offensive coordinators in not even 2 years. I mean, the Carolina Panthers have now replaced any dysfunctional franchise in sports as maybe the worst. They stink. Is Andy Dalton better than Bryce Young? I guess. Does it matter? With all due respect to Andy Dalton, my fellow redhead, what a mess the Carolina Panthers are. I think the only thing we know for sure through 2 games is the Panthers stink. They stink. Now, I have a question I'm going to raise to the audience here, and I'll weigh in myself. Which 0-2 teams are in the most trouble? I'm going to not count the Panthers because I think they're bad. They stink either way. I'm not going to count the Giants because they're bad. They stink either way. I'm referring to teams that were either playoff teams last year or thought to be contenders this year. For instance, Cincinnati Bengals were thought to be contenders. They're 0-2. The Ravens were in the AFC title game last year. They're 0-2. The Rams were in the playoffs last year. They're 0-2. The Jaguars, they were 8-3 last year before Lawrence got hurt. Now they're 0-2. Which 0-2 teams are in the most trouble? And I got to be honest. I think it might be the Jaguars. Now, I don't know how good the Jaguars actually are. But they were 8-3 last year, and Lawrence got hurt. He got the big contract. We just haven't seen it from Trevor Lawrence yet. In their first 2 games, they have scored 17 points and blew it against the Dolphins and 13 points against the Browns. Now they play the Bills and Texans in their next 2. The Jaguars could be 0-4. The Jacksonville Jaguars could be sitting at 0-4 with that schedule. Now, schedule's the schedule, right? I thought the Raiders were definitely going to be 0-2, and they went into Baltimore and they won. So you don't know. But Trevor Lawrence, man, you got to play better. All right, Trevor Lawrence is the highest paid quarterback in the league. He got the big deal despite the fact he has been good, but not generational, not great like many hyped him up to be coming out of Clemson. If Trevor Lawrence is who they say he's supposed to be, don't you got to will your team back from this 0-2 start and have a big-time performance now against the Buffalo Bills? I know it's a Monday night game. I know it's in Buffalo, but you got to find a way to win that game. You got to find a way. You can't start 0-3. And that's the hole they have put themselves in down in Jacksonville. You look at some of the other 0-2 teams. I mean, look, the Bengals do have a history of doing this. But at some point, you put yourself in a hole. Can you come out of it? Now, the good news for the Bengals is I think they will come out of it again this time. Their next 2 games are against the Commanders and the Panthers. That should be 2 wins. You don't assume, but it better be. Then the schedule gets a little more difficult with the matchup against the Ravens, who also are 0-2. And seeing the Ravens lose the way they did was shocking. It really was. Ravens will play the Cowboys now. Then they play the Bills. Then they play the Bengals. I don't think they'll lose all 3 of those games, but isn't 0-5 on the table for Baltimore? Certainly a tough start for a team that was on the precipice of going to the Super Bowl last year. That was their year. They had the team. They had the defense. They had the MVP season from Lamar. And they blew it in the championship game against a Chiefs team that was probably at their weakest during this dynastic run. And they still won it all. And that brings me to the next point here. When you play the Chiefs, not only are you playing a great quarterback, great coach, great defense, playing the refs. Maybe Chiefs fans don't want to hear that. I would embrace it. Patriots and Brady got the same rules favored towards them. Mahomes now gets it too. That's how it goes. We saw that again at the end of that game on Sunday. But this was a wild week in the league, man. It just shows you don't bury yourself early. Stay afloat because that's the key to everything. But I think when you look at the schedule for the Ravens, they are the team at 0-2 that I think could be in the most trouble. Now, as far as teams that impressed, I mean, you have to start with the Vikings. They lose J.J. McCarthy over the summer. No one thinks anything of Sam Darnold, myself included. And he's played really well. And yeah, having competent coaching matters. I think Sam sitting behind Purdy all last year and learning from Shanahan has helped him. I think having Justin Jefferson has helped him. Having Jordan Addison, having weapons. I don't know if Sam Darnold's truly turned the corner because he's had moments where he's played well at the beginning of a season before. We saw this in Carolina when he first got acquired after the Jets traded him there. But Darnold is at least proving that you can win with him. And the Vikings are going to have a season with the injury to Jordan Love. All of a sudden, that division, not as guaranteed to go to Green Bay or Detroit as maybe we thought. Now, the other team in that division I wanted to mention, the Bears. Give credit to the Texans for winning their first two. They're 2-0. Houston's a really good team. Stroud is Stroud. But, man, people are killing Caleb Williams this week. And I got news for you. I'm not going to be that guy. I am not surprised in the slightest if you watch the show that Caleb Williams has struggled. Yes, they're 1-1, but he wasn't good in the first game against Tennessee. He obviously played poorly on Sunday Night Football, where DJ Moore is visibly upset in this game. He's a rookie. Most rookies suck. CJ Stroud doing what he did, I think ruined it for all rookie quarterbacks. The expectations now are, hey, you draft a rookie quarterback and there's a chance they could be Stroud. That's an outlier. Name me the rookies that ever had a year as good as Stroud at that position. You can't. It never happened. You got to go back to what, like RG3, when he was really good a decade ago as a rookie? More than a decade ago now, 2012. Andrew Luck that year as well. It takes time. Josh Allen sucked as a rookie. Lamar Jackson sucked as a rookie. Trevor Lawrence wasn't good as a rookie. Peyton Manning, everyone knows that story, led the NFL in picks. 26 interceptions. Like, it's hard. So people are killing Caleb Williams. I can't sit here and kill Caleb when I know he's going to get better. But you saw in this game on Sunday when he's rolling out of the pocket, escaping the rush, throwing downfield. In college, you get away with that. In the NFL, it's picked. Speed of the game is just different. So it's going to take him an adjustment period. It's why I didn't subscribe to the, Bears are going to be a playoff team mantra. I'm not writing them off. They still have a really good defense. They held Stroud on the Texans to just 19 points. Right? Fairbairn had to kick 4 field goals in that one, but still, it's not going to be easy. It is not going to be easy. But I'll say this. The teams that I think we know are bad, Panthers, Denver, Giants. I don't see hope for any of those teams. The Panthers are an unmitigated disaster. The Broncos with Bo Nix, he looks in over his head. And the Giants, I mean, if you can't beat the Commanders, who can you beat? Daniel Jones was better to his credit. He wasn't great, but he wasn't bad. Giants next couple of games at Cleveland and that defense. The Cowboys who own the Giants. And then at Seattle, followed by Cincinnati and Philly. I mean, the Giants might not be a favorite in another game until they play the Commanders at home on November 3rd, or I believe the game's in Germany. They play the Panthers on the 10th. So I don't really count the Giants as the team at 0-2 in the most trouble because I don't have high expectations for them anyway, but I don't see them going anywhere. I don't. But really, the big takeaway, I think, from week 2 is that it is a long season, and there's always outlier results. Remember, last year, Dallas Cowboys, I remember this vividly because I got knocked out of my survivor pool because of it. They destroyed the Giants. They beat up the Jets. They're 2-0. Micah Parsons is unreal. He's unblockable. And then what happened? They lost to Josh Dobbs and the Cardinals in week 3, and my survivor pool went up into smithereens. It is really, really hard to win in the NFL, no matter who you play, especially early. There's some randomness early. Teams haven't established themselves. So you can't win the Super Bowl in September. Ask the Eagles. You could bury yourself. And if you're a team that's 0-2 right now, you got to get off the snide quickly. because the stats are the stats. 90% of teams that start 0-2 miss the postseason. Now, it's a little different now with an extra wild card team and a 17th game, but still, stats are the stats. You don't want to be 0-2, and you certainly don't want to be 0-3. But this was a wild week in the NFL. No doubt about it. We'll open it up to your comments or questions you have for me. You're watching the Jake Asman Football Show. We talk NFL football multiple times a week. Typically, we give you a show on Monday or Tuesday after a full Sunday slate. We'll come at you again Friday with Cole Thompson previewing the upcoming weekend and reacting to a little Thursday night football between the Jets and the Patriots. I'll be at that game in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Here are the latest odds from BetUS for Jets-Pats. The line right now is at 6.5. If it gets to 7, I probably wouldn't touch it. I do think the Jets win the game. They're the better team. But I could see this game being close. New England's defense has played well so far. Jets offense, well, light years better than what we saw at any point during Robert Saleh's first 3 years. They're still trying to figure things out. They're still not all in and on 100% the same page all around. I think we saw some really encouraging signs, though, from Aaron Rodgers and company. Braylon Allen's emergence in this offense next to Bryce is awesome. Rodgers on that game-winning drive was sensational, 5 of 5. Big throw after big throw to Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams. But it's still a short week. Jets are banged up right now. C.J. Mosley, DJ Reed, they could be questionable for this one. Jermaine Johnson is out for the year. How does the Jets defense adjust without him for the first full game? And Jacoby Brissett, while not great, last 2 years has played the Jets well. So my advice would be this. If it gets to 7, I stay away, or maybe even take the points with the Pats. If it stays where it's at right now at 6.5 at BetUS Sportsbook, I would probably take the Jets. That would be my lean. But I'm never going to tell someone to willingly bet on the Jets as a Jet fan. But if not the Jets, any sport, any NFL game, any prop, any future, BetUS has it. So sign up for BetUS, and they're offering right now a 150% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 when you use the code YouTube150. That's YouTube150 over on BetUS Sportsbook. So check it out. Thank you to BetUS, of course, for sponsoring the show. And hopefully the Jets do, in fact, cover that 6.5 number so I could be a very happy camper on Friday when we come back with our next Jake Asman Football Show. Comments, questions, super chats, your thoughts on the biggest takeaways from week 2. What stood out from what was a wild NFL Sunday? Michael says Bengals and Ravens will bounce back from 0-2. I think the Bengals have the easier path to do it. Ravens' schedule is tough. I still have faith in them. They're too talented, but just shows you how quickly a season could spiral. John says, how do you lose a game with 3 touchdowns when the other team has none? Ask the Giants. You don't have a kicker, and you give up 7 field goals. I mean, the Jaden Daniels-led Commanders offense didn't punt the entire game. Matthew says, Jake, out of all the 0-2 teams, which one is most likely to bounce back? I still think Cincinnati. They've done this 0-2 thing a lot. And if you look at their schedule, I know we just went through it before, but for those just tuning in, well, you never want to be 0-2. If you are going to start 0-2, nice to have the Commies and Panthers back-to-back weeks. Jay says, Texans are rolling. Yeah, and they didn't play great on Sunday. They played well enough to win. There's no style points in the NFL. That's another takeaway from this week. Just win. Just win. Rourke Striff says the 0-2 team that doesn't have a quarterback, that's who's in the danger zone. Yeah, Giants, Panthers. They don't have quarterbacks. So that puts you obviously behind the 8 ball. But you look at some of the outcomes first 2 weeks, man. I mean, you just never know. I also would be remiss when we're talking about some of the most impressive 2-0 teams. Got to give Baker Mayfield and the Bucs some more love. Listen, Todd Bowles is making me eat my words. I didn't think the guy could coach. I know he never had a real quarterback in New York, but there were some glaring issues I had with Bowles. And he's been better. Helps when you have a competent quarterback for sure, but even his last year with Brady, they were only 8-9. And this year, off to an excellent start. Super chat from Nose Kills. Joe Douglas promised Sam Darnold's parents he'd fix the Jets O-line. Now it's fixed and Darnold's playing lights out. Yeah, so far so good for Sam. I would just say this. We've seen Sam play well at the beginning of a season before, and then defensive coaches adjust, pick up on his tendencies, and then he gets exposed. Will it be different this time? That's the question I think you have. Will it be different this time? Mark writes in, Jake, why do they call you Jake? Well, that's my name, Mark. That is why they call me Jake. That's an interesting question. Tom Ace writes in, I need to apply as a full-time paid asmaniac. My real-life job's now getting in the way. Hey, if you're in the chat right now, everyone say happy birthday to Tom Ace. Mark says, did the Jets win or did the Titans lose? I think the Jets won and the Titans lost. And I think that's the NFL. And what I mean by that is this. Sometimes winning is by not making the losing plays. Tennessee turned it over twice. The Jets didn't. Jets capitalized on the turnovers. Jets blocked a punt, turned it into 3 points. Should have been 7, but at least they got 3. And when the game was tied at 17, Aaron Rodgers led a game-winning drive where he was 5 for 5 on the 7 plays, changed plays at the line of scrimmage on the game-winning touchdown run, changed from pass to a run, showed Braylon Allen where to go opposite the safety blitz, and the Jets won. That's winning plays. So the Jets won the game. Titans also contributed to the losing by having critical turnovers. One of them in the red zone by Levis. Can't do that. Sarah says, Bears have no O-line. Caleb also holds onto the ball. NY says, Bowles can coach defense. Yes, he can. Jay writes in, Lovie Smith should get a statue in Houston for forcing them to miss Bryce Young. He really should. And the Bears obviously have Caleb in part because of that move. So crazy. This says Titans are the Jets of last year. Good team with a crap quarterback. Titans low-key have a very good roster. Good pass rush, good corner and Snead, some good weapons. The difference is one team had Aaron Rodgers, the other team had Will Levis. Dakota says Jags going 0-3. I mean, they play the Bills, so it's not going to be easy. The Bills probably have been the most impressive team from week 2, just from like their win, right? What they did, the opponent. Because a lot of people were picking Miami in that game. Now, I guess the best win you could say is either the Niners or the Saints, but like I thought the way the Bills played, the domination, that was impressive. Remember, Tua got hurt when it was 31-10. It's not like he got hurt early in this game and then they blew him out. Last night was a crazy game too on Monday night, by the way. Johnny Boy, Jake, do you believe Minnesota is the real deal? I don't look at the Vikings as a true Super Bowl contender. I got to see more. But I have to acknowledge Darnold's looked good. Their defense has made critical plays when it's mattered. We'll see. They're going to play the Texans this week and then the Packers and the Jets. That's a difficult 3-game stretch for Minnesota coming up. We'll see how they look. And that Jet game's in London too, so who knows what that's going to look like. I think actually the Jets get a break that game's in London because I think Minnesota's got a really good home field advantage. But we'll see. If you're watching live right now, it's the Jake Asman Football Show presented by BetUS. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Ray says, damn, Commanders didn't punt for the whole game. Giants are so trash. 7 field goals, 0 punts for the Commanders in a 21-18 win. Giants scored 3 touchdowns and lost. It's never happened in the history of the NFL. Crazy. But that's the problem with the Giants now. They feel rudderless. How bad does it get? Because if it gets really, really bad, the conversation is going to be about, does the head coach and GM survive it? They'll argue, we never got to pick our quarterback. Give us a chance. But, I mean, if you win 3 or 4 games, can you keep everyone? That's the problem you run into. NY Jets, Florida. Which coach has the hottest seat? It's a great question. I mean, I think Dable's seat is certainly warming up. Look, I mean, Robert Saleh is still on the hot seat for the Jet fans that are in here. I don't think it's as hot as maybe some of the other teams that are 0-2 right now. By the way, Indy being 0-2 too. Couldn't beat Malik Willis, really? When did we start to get concerned about Anthony Richardson? 3 interceptions, didn't play well. Only scored 10 points. I think Doug Peterson's on the hot seat. I mean, we'll see changes. There always are, what, 5 or 6 openings seemingly every year, sometimes even more. Crazy. It was a crazy week in the league, though. There's no doubt about that. I mean, the upsets alone, just crazy. Hopefully there's no upset on Thursday night. Jets need to handle their business. Once again, BetUS. If you plan to bet Thursday Night Football 2 days from right now. Point total is around 38. If I had to give a lean, I probably would take the over in the game. Barely. You know, I could see this game being 24-17, which would get you to 41. Could see it in that range. So Jets would cover the 6.5, but if it's 7, I'm probably not playing it. By the way, coaches on the hot seat. I mean, they're 1-1, but Mike McCarthy, how is your team getting destroyed in your home opener? How does that happen? To the Saints? Really? Crazy. Anyway, I want to thank everyone who tuned in to the Jake Asman Football Show. Thank you to BetUS for being our presenting sponsor. If you're a football fan, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back on Friday to recap Thursday Night Football and give out some picks with Cole Thompson for all the games coming up in week 3 of the season. Enjoy the season, man. It flies by. Can you believe it's already week 3? Can you believe it? What a show it's been. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. My name is Jake Asman. You have been watching the Jake Asman Football Show presented by BetUS.